Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Davies MP. Phil, thank you very much for joining me.
It's a pleasure.
Now, you've been the Conservative Member of Parliament for Shipley since 2005, and I understand that you are considered the most rebellious Conservative MP in Parliament. How do you feel about that, first of all?
Yes, as people keep telling me that. And I'm sure it must be true, but I don't keep a tally. It's not something that it's not one of my ambitions to be the most rebellious MP. I'd quite like not to be rebellious, because it would mean the government was doing what I wanted it to do. So it's a sign of failure that I'm such a rebel, not a sign of success. But to be honest, most of my rebellions came during the coalition government, when we didn't have a Conservative government. We had a coalition government, and I was elected as a Conservative MP, not a coalition MP. And so many of my disagreements with the government came during those years. So that probably skews it quite a bit.
Very understandable. And we love to see a rebel when they're standing up for the right things. Now, you're also a member of the Culture, Media and Sport Select Committee. And
no, I'm not.
Oh.
I'm not. No.
In that case, I apologise.
As of Monday night, I no longer am a member of the Culture, Media and Sport Select Committee, but I was, before Monday night, a member of the Culture, Media and Sport Select Committee.
Right, breaking news on Defund the BBC. Well, we can still talk about the big story, which is Martin Bashir and that Panorama programme. And, I understand there's going to be a parliamentary inquiry into this, because it's quite extraordinary, isn't it? It's got huge ramifications for the country, as well as some of the biggest institutions in the country, let alone the people involved. So on the one hand, we've got the BBC, who make a point of saying that they are journalism that you can trust. And we've just found out that, they'll stoop to any level to get a story. And then on the other hand, you've got the long-standing effect that this BBC programme had on the royal family. And many people have believed stories that, that Diana was under surveillance. So there's a vulnerable individual, and our national broadcaster chose to fake evidence to play on her greatest fears, even accusing her own child of spying on her. And then we find out that the BBC were made aware of the situation and held a whitewash of an inquiry under the recently departed Director General, Lord Hall. So first of all, what are your thoughts on this situation?
Well, it is deeply concerning, to be perfectly honest. I mean, the BBC prides itself on being this sort of responsible public service broadcaster that people can trust, and it drives a coach and horses through that claim. And what I would say is that, just imagine if this had been done by the Daily Mail or the Daily Telegraph. What on earth would the BBC have made of it? They would have been all over this like a rash. It would have been all over the Today programme, saying how you can't trust tabloid journalism and it's absolutely terrible and everyone should be hanged, drawn and quartered for doing it. But this is the BBC that's done this, and I think this is a really, really serious moment for the BBC, to be perfectly honest. Because, as I say, it drives a complete coach and horses through everything that they claim they are, which is a trusted public service broadcaster. And it really goes to show that actually they're no better than any other media outlet.
Absolutely, and it's a big shame, isn't it? But we've got a new Director General now. Is Tim Davie making significant changes to the BBC that signal real reform?
To be honest, I'm quite impressed with Tim Davie. I think he's certainly the best Director General that's been there since I've been in Parliament, and although that bar is not a high one to jump, to be perfectly frank. But I think he actually does understand some of the problems that the BBC has in terms of connecting with people around the country and people, for example, people who voted for Brexit and things like that. I think he does actually get that, and he's probably the best hope the BBC have got, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I think, he is probably the only person who can save the BBC in its current form. Whether he will or not is a different matter. And whether or not he'll see through the things that he intends to do, again, remains to be seen. I mean, he sort of talks a good game on, people at the BBC not being on social media and all the rest of it. And, well, let's see how all of this goes, because I think his instincts are right. I'm not entirely certain he's going to see it through and sort of take on the sort of metropolitan establishment at the BBC. I'm not sure he's, I'm not convinced as yet he's got it in him to actually face them down. So we'll see. But I think, I think his instincts are a lot better than his predecessors' instincts. And but time will tell. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. So you mentioned, the social media rules. I'd like to get your opinion on his enforcement of those rules, but also the diversity drive as well, both on and off screen, and his new quota system. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I mean, like I said, we'll see how he polices the social media ban. Early indications are not great, but we'll see. I'm a fair-minded person. I'm prepared to see how he gets on and not prejudge him. I mean, I'm very critical. I mean, of all of this diversity quotas and all the rest of it. I think it's one of the things, this kind of political correctness, that alienates huge swathes of the country. In fact, when Tim Davie came before the select committee, I suggested that this might be one way to try and reconnect with people who had lost faith in the BBC by scrapping all of these on-screen diversity quota targets. And again, is he going to do things like that? I really don't. I don't think so. I mean, I don't know what his instincts are on these things. I don't know what he believes. But even if he was to agree with me that this is not sensible, I just don't think he's going to. There's too big a lobby in the BBC and in the media generally for this kind of politically correct rubbish, and I can't see him standing up to that. But it is one of the key reasons why people have got no confidence in the BBC, because they think that they're more obsessed with political correctness than they are with being a public service broadcaster.
Absolutely, and when they're spending 100 million on this diversity, which we know to be skin deep and superficial, kind of it's against the purpose, isn't it? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, they don't. They're not interested. They never seem to be interested in diversity of opinion on the BBC. That if they concentrated a bit more on recruiting people with diverse opinions, they might get somewhere. But that's the bit of diversity they're not interested in.
Absolutely, the same with all the metropolitan elites. So we've been following the US election coverage over the last 10 days or so, and again we're hearing one perspective from the BBC. It seems to be the Biden Broadcasting Corporation at the moment. They didn't manage to hide their partisan views during Brexit, and they don't seem to be doing a great job of it now, do they?
No, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I think I think that's true. I mean, I think anybody watching the BBC's coverage of the US election, in fact, to be perfectly honest, the whole of the mainstream media, to be perfectly frank, it's quite clear that it's more like Saint Joe now rather than Sleepy Joe, as far as the media are concerned. I mean, this man can do no wrong. I mean, he's like the second coming, to be perfectly honest. If you watch the TV coverage of him, he's like the greatest thing since sliced bread. So yes, I mean, again, it's perfectly obvious that the BBC has an agenda to support Biden, and no doubt over the next 4 years we'll have broadcasters fawning all over him. Particularly at the BBC, I don't doubt. I don't expect the same scrutiny of Joe Biden as the media gave to Donald Trump. That is for sure.
Funny that, isn't it? So is the BBC still fit for purpose?
No, it's not. I mean, look, I'm not anti-BBC, actually, and I don't want to see the abolition of the BBC. I'm perfectly happy for the BBC to continue. I'm very happy to see it thrive. What I'm not in favour of is people being compelled to pay for the BBC licence fee, even if they don't want to. I believe in choice. There may well have been an argument when televisions were first invented to have a levy on people to put something on there. That's fine, but it's completely anachronistic these days. There's a huge swathe of channels. Most of them deliver what the BBC does anyway. It's not as I don't actually accept this idea that you only get things on the BBC you wouldn't get anywhere else. There's probably more public service broadcasting on Sky Arts alone than there is on the whole of the BBC. So I don't think we need this compulsory levy anymore. It's completely unjustifiable. Certainly, if the BBC was set up now, nobody would even contemplate that as an option. And so, if you wouldn't start with one, why continue with it now? I just want to see the BBC, go into the real world of being a commercial broadcaster. And my view is that if the BBC accepted what I'm saying and abolished the license fee, it would actually become a much bigger media company around the world. It does have a huge brand recognition around the world. And so if it could tap into subscribers all around the world, it could carry on doing exactly what it's doing now, but just on a much bigger scale. And everyone would be happy. The BBC would be happy. The staff would be happy. People would still be able to access it. But those of us who didn't want to pay for it wouldn't have to. And I don't really see what the downside is, personally. I think everyone would be a winner from scrapping the license fee.
Yeah, absolutely. You raised some really good points there, Phil, because we did some polling ourselves at Defund the BBC a few weeks ago, and we found that there's a lot of confusion about what it is and what isn't covered by the TV license. And basically it covers all live TV, doesn't it? Whether it's Channel 4, ITV, doesn't matter. We're still paying the BBC for the privilege of watching other stations. But in our polling, we found that over 50% of people felt that you shouldn't have to pay for a TV license if you don't watch any BBC content on live TV. Now, surely there's some scope in the BBC's charter that should be reducing this down in this digital age to only cover BBC content.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I can't, how can it be a controversial point to say, if I don't watch the BBC, I shouldn't have to pay for it? I mean, in what world could that not be a statement of the obvious? But it seems to be a matter of high contention amongst the liberal elite in the country. You wouldn't say about anything else, really, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, I think the license fee has had its day. To be perfectly honest, I think it's losing public support, and I think the BBC will have to accept that, whether it wants to or not. And for me, it's got two choices. It can either, over the next few years, accept that kicking and screaming, or it can embrace it and actually make the most of it. And in my view, if I was in charge of the BBC, I would be saying, well, look, let's embrace this opportunity. We can maximize our revenues, which means that we can carry on doing exactly the same thing as we're doing. And actually we'll have more freedom to do better journalism. I don't really see what the downside is for anybody, to be perfectly honest. And the idea that if you don't have the license fee, the BBC couldn't do what they're doing at the moment, I just don't accept. As I always say to the BBC, if the license fee is so popular, and if it's such great value for money, well, it's got absolutely nothing to fear from charging the same amount of money on a voluntary basis because presumably everyone will be queuing around the block to sign up for it if it's such wonderful value for money and everybody's in favour of it. So I don't really see what the downside is of scrapping it and making it a subscription model.
Here. Well, the BBC are making a big thing, aren't they, over being a case that they can make no changes to the license fee before 2027. So what can MPs do about this?
Well, I think, to be fair, I think that's reasonable. I wouldn't want anyone to get the idea that the license fee is going to be abolished before 2027, because I think the chances of that happening are slim to nil. I think, from my perspective, the question is, and I've been through this with Brexit. Back in 2005, I was the only person in Parliament who would stand up and actually say the words, we should leave the EU, and people told me then, well, that was a stupid battle to be fighting all on my own, no one else agreeing with me and all the rest of it. Well, you've got to start somewhere and you've got to chip away, and so all I ever think with these things is, how popular something is at any point is not really within my gift. All I can do is make the case and keep making the case, because it's a good case to make, and hopefully eventually people will come around to your way of thinking it. I don't know when it will be. I don't know if it'll be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, but I'm pretty confident that at some point people are going to get to the point where they can no longer defend the license fee.
So I think we're getting to that point. We've got a lot of popular demand. We've got hundreds of thousands of supporters. What can our supporters do to ensure change happens and make sure that MPs are aware that this is what they want, to scrap the license fee?
I think they just need to lobby their MP. I mean, often the problem the problem we always have in this country is that the sort of left in this country, the metropolitan, politically correct left-wing brigade, they make up for their lack of numbers with the loudness of their voice. And the reason why they are so noisy and vocal and stage demonstrations and all this kind of thing is that they know they're in a minority, and so they're never going to win an election on that particular platform. So the only way they try and get their way is by shouting the loudest and causing as much fuss as possible. They do it because they're in a minority. The problem with the majority in this country is that they always remain silent because they don't feel they need to demonstrate and protest and all the rest of it. And they just think that they can get their way through a democratic vote. But the world is changing, and the silent majority are going to have to stop being so silent, and they're going to have to start speaking up because if they don't, their voices will get drowned out. And so, all I would say to the what I consider to be the mainstream majority in the country is that they should, not be afraid or shy of contacting their local MP and explaining how strongly they feel about this, because ultimately that is the way that this will change. It's through what happens in Parliament.
I like that. We don't have to screech as loud as the vocal minority, but we do need to make our voices heard, and there are many reasonable ways to do that, so contact your MPs. Phil Davies MP, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for fighting the good fight.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on.